Alright, so now that we've gone over kind of the basics and the premise of a literature review, we're going to go over how you draft this literature review, which is the stage you're at right now, right? So to help you approach your draft, this section will also look at the exigents. That means like the purpose of a literature review, your thesis statement, how to organize, the introduction and conclusion, and citations. Some of these portions I'm not going to go over. I'm going to let you read on your own. I think they're pretty straightforward and what the information states. But for other slides, I will narrate for you. We've talked about thesis statements now for every single project that we've done, making sure that we have the what is being researched, why this research is important, how this research will be in fact researched or examined, and what you hope to find or do find, right? And so these are the main kind of components even for a literature review. So your thesis statement should give us an overview of what the critical assessment of the literature and the topic and your argument or claim is, right? Tells us why that an overview of current scholarly conversations is necessary for examining this particular research topic in a particular way, and how this is going to be done by pointing out gaps or weaknesses in the literature, and then finally telling us how this analysis of the literature will speak to and point to the larger aim of this type of study in your field or in your discourse community. There's some examples of thesis statements that you can go over at your leisure that will give you kind of a little bit of a better idea as to what I may be looking for, especially making sure that you also look at the student examples in Blackboard. Organizing your literature review can be kind of tricky, and so it's nice to know that there are 5 common approaches to organizing the body paper: topical, distance too close, debate, chronological, and seminal. For most of you, you're going to either be looking at topical, possibly debate, or chronological. So the characteristics of a topical organization for literature review is that, one, it's the most common approach used, and especially since this is your first time, it may be, the most easy for you. It breaks the field into a number of subfields, which is what we did with our concept map, right, where I asked you to say, here's the main research topic and here are some subtopics. So that's around this main research topic that I have chose to focus on. I know that there's probably like 50 subtopics, but I chose 3, and this is why. Often discusses each subsection individually, sometimes with critiques of each different subtopic and why it is or is not important to the larger research topic. And that's very useful as well if you're thinking of doing headings and subheadings for your literature review. So your literature review would have this main heading, literature review, but underneath you could have subheadings that reference each subtopic that you've decided to focus upon regarding that literature review. And it's most useful for organizing a larger body of literature review that doesn't have 1 or 2 seminal, meaning the most important studies, but in fact has many studies that are important and that relate to your topic. Some typical languages used, type of writing styles used for a topical literature review would be things like introducing sources this way. 3 important areas in this field have received attention in these ways. A has been approached from 2 perspectives by, F and G. The most important developments in terms of topic B has been, C has also been important in the study because of. So these are some considerations as to how you might look at topical research and organization of sources in this type of construct. This one, distance too close, this is more useful for methods, methodologies, kind of lab and scientific research in which one's actually conducting the research as well. You can peruse through this but for most of you this is not what you're going to be using. Another type of topical approach, remember we just discussed topical, would be in which you look at the specific characteristics of studies or of topics, and you look at them in a chronological order, right? Where you start out with the most recent, maybe top sources, and move on to the most, you start out with the least recent sources, moving to the most recent. It's most useful when it's very clear that there are opposing views or very, very, very specific, arguments or camps of thought between particular research in the field. So something such as, say, genetic testing, where the ethical considerations of genetic testing in comparison to the medical concern of genetic testing, this might be a very good type of approach one could use because there's such strong and heated debates regarding these two subtopics, right? Typical language use, there have been 2, 3, or 4, etc. distinct approaches or problems with this research. The first model, or the first topic, posits that the ethical considerations of cloning is so severe that it should never even be considered. Or the second model argues, however, that cloning human organs is necessary and the next step in medical evolution, whatever, as an example. The third would be chronological characteristics. Again, this is used in topical types of literature reviews where you start out with the oldest sources and move on to the most recent. And this is quite useful if you're trying to develop what has happened over a period of time, how things have developed, how things have changed in the way that they've been thought about or researched. So this is definitely much more useful if you're taking a topic and trying to narrate its progression throughout the history of time, which again, for most of your topics that I've seen thus far, this isn't something that necessarily works for you. And then seminal study, I'm not going to go over really in detail, but this would be if you, and this is often very particularly used either in the field of humanities, where one theorist has become the theorist regarding this research topic, or in the sciences, where one type of method and the results of that method has been so influential that others are trying to replicate it. So again, not something that for the focus of this type of literature review for this particular course, I would imagine most of you using. All right, so you can go over some of the main kind of bullet points about, introductions that we've covered. I have another example of an introduction that covers those particular bullet points, but conclusions we've not yet covered. Conclusions are very different than for literature reviews than in other types of research papers because they have to do some very particular things, and they must do them. So you must summarize the main findings of your literature review based on everything that you have presented to us and the types of problems in those research articles or concerns that have been brought up. What are the findings? What are we left with? You need to remind us that. If your literature review on cloning has left us with this overarching sense that while there are ethical implications for cloning, when used ethically and when used only for the development of organs for organ transplantation, the benefits outweigh the risks. You should remind us of that, right? You should provide us with closure, so this means you should kind of let us know as to what does this all mean and why is this important for not only me as a reader, but for my field at large. And you should tell us the so what problem. So, okay, you gave me all this information, why should I care? Because this should be leading you up to some type of proposal for fixing this problem, right? Whether that be some type of methods or some type of application of that research, whatever it may be. And you should also consider the implications for further research. for the case of this literature review that we're doing for our course. What might we need to do more to make this problem less of a problem? What might you envision other people doing with this research and trying to address this problem? There are some example conclusions that you can go over at your leisure as well. Make sure again that you are citing sources in the introduction of your literature review as well as in the literature review itself. Remember, it should look like sources have thrown up all over your paper in the introduction and in the literature review. And if it does not, then there's something very, very wrong. And remember, you should not be using quotations. In particular, if you are an APA. MLA, you have a little bit more leeway, but even there, since you're just supposed to be synthesizing and combining sources, the use of quotes is very difficult to do if you're doing a literature review correctly. I have a few examples for you of how one would cite sources. Apologies for them being in APA, but I assume that for most of you, if you're using MLA, you've been using it for some time, and so therefore you are quite familiar with in-text citations for MLA. Again, if you have any questions regarding drafting your literature review, if you would like me to review something, certainly send it along. I prefer shorter pieces of the document because it's much easier for me to like read maybe 1 or 2 pages and say, aha, yes, on the right track, keep going this way, or maybe, no, actually, this is not what I'm looking for at all, because this way, God forbid, it's not what I'm looking for, you're not revising, say, 8 pages, but rather 1 or 2, right? So, I mean, I prefer you do it in that way, and you certainly can do it in stages as well. I'll send this on the announcement page when I upload this video, but I will be up in Marquette visiting my mom, and we will be camping at the time that we're up there, so my connection to the internet may be spotty from about Saturday on. So for that reason, just bear with me if I don't respond as quickly as I typically do. All right, thanks.